Comfort is really important on your mountain bike for maximum riding time and enjoyment.
So let's look at the contact points on the bike, how you can play around with setup to make the bike suit you and make it really comfortable.
Let's start with perhaps the most important point of comfort on the bike, the saddle. Now these things come in all different shapes and sizes. You also got widths and lengths change as well. And then this center part right in the middle here, which is kind of almost, you could say, cut out, is for the sensitive areas, just to give you a little bit more comfort. Likewise with the padding, you can actually get thicker and thinner ones. However, I prefer to always wear a chamois when I'm riding. Just gives me that extra bit of comfort and takes away a little bit of that numbness, which can be pretty sore. Also, the positioning of the saddle is really important. Play around with moving the saddle along the rails until you find the best seated pedaling position for you. I keep mine pretty central, but if you're maybe slightly too tall for your bike, you can try sliding it back on the rails to give you a bit more space. You'll probably find that most people have it in quite a neutral position when I'm talking about the angle of the saddle itself. If you're riding cross country, you're actually going to have the nose facing downwards a little bit more, so you can just get the weight over the front of the bike when you're climbing. And for downhill, you're going to have that nose sort of raised up, so you can get the saddle sort of almost like an angle like that, where you can actually get your weight right over the back of the bike, and it just gives you a little bit more control and stability. For me, I'm going to keep it in a fairly neutral position for my all-mountain enduro riding.
Next to the grips, and things to consider are diameter, rubber compound and pattern. If you've got larger hands, you might find that getting a larger diameter grip is more comfortable. However, if you've got small hands, you might find that brings on arm pump because you're not getting quite so much of a grasp around the handlebars. These ergon grips come in two different diameters, regular and slim. They're also asymmetrical and tapered, so you can actually play around with the angle of them on the bar for extra comfort. Finally, to the rubber compound and pattern. Softer compound is always going to be more comfortable, especially if you ride without gloves. However, they're not going to last as long. It's worth considering for wet conditions, actually buying a grip with slightly larger profile knobs on there. They're going to give you more friction on the bar. Also, the controls on your bars are going to make some difference to the comfort. The most important ones being brakes, so make sure they're in a really easy position to reach. So I set them relatively high on the bar, so when I'm sat down or over the back, when I'm braking hard, I can get to them easily, and also play around with that reach adjustment. Next is my dropper seat post remote. This Crank Brothers one is really adjustable, so not only can I get the lever at the right place, I can also set the angle at which it pushes, so I can twist it around, so when I'm stood up cranking, I'm pushing directly into the stroke of that lever. Finally, the shifter and any lockout levers you might have.
Another major factor which can really affect your comfort is actually the stem and the bars. If we talk about the stem first, I'm going to talk about the length. So if you're riding cross country, you're going to find that you want a longer stem, just to give you a little bit more comfort and you can get your weight over the front when you're climbing. For downhill, you're actually going to have a shorter stem, just so the bike's a little bit more nimble and you can get your weight further back. Moving on to the bars, and it's especially a hot topic about bar width. For downhill, you're actually going to see that they use wider bars, and this is just all about leverage. How you can push the bike around just makes it a little bit easier than having narrow bars. But in cross country, when they're racing bar to bar and they're having to fight battles, you'll find that they're narrow, they're a little bit more twitchy, but they do give you that comfort when you're actually climbing up the hills. And of course, the ability to be a bit aggressive when you're in the pack.
Finally, to the pedals. With flats, it's pretty simple. You bolt them onto your bike, you can play around with your foot position to find the most comfort. For technical riding, I always recommend trying to get the ball of your foot just in front of the axle. That's going to dip your heel slightly and mean you're riding in the pedal, so when you ride into something rough, your foot's not flat, because you could risk actually sliding forward. Heel down, you're just going to drive the bike forward. However, for long pedaling sections, sometimes people do like to slide their toes a little bit more onto the pedal. That is going to put you more toe down and actually uses your calf muscles a little bit more for pedaling.
Now for the clip pedals. So these pedals, you actually clip right into the pedal so it's in a fixed position. For descending, I like to keep it in a fairly central position where sort of the ball of my foot is right where the cleat is, so I can really rock my heels back and forth and dropping them for descent, so it can help me get my weight over the rear of the bike.
If you want to see some videos where we go into more depth about setup, then you can click over here for clipless pedal setup.
And if you click somewhere just around here, you're going to get to a video about mission control and setting up your bars in your cockpit.
Click on the globe just here to subscribe.
And if you like setup, then give it a thumb up like.